The last piece, just to make it a kind of the reality, you know, we've got to look at it in some senses, although California is the lovely exception, we really do have to look at what's happened and is still happening in the country. That model that you have in front of you is in some senses the old model. Right? And by that I simply mean it's the local district of which you have 1,000 of those in California. Illinois has 900 of them, and so forth. And our dialogue has gone basically, build a collaborative structure here at the district, drop to a collaborative structure here, empower, set parameters, let them go, let them pull, and so forth. The only piece that I think we should add is in some senses 10 years ago, first of all, the Republican policy piece and then the Democratic one added 2 levels to this. All right? And they are profound in terms of the way they have basically rolled out. These didn't exist in 2000 in the sense of the power and the clout and so forth. But when No Child comes, it starts with all the elements, and all of a sudden the feds are in it. They can't come in it directly. We all know the story. They basically require the state to start moving and so forth. We can go past the 10 years have been incredible in terms of change. The point I want to make is the last 3 years, because of something you could not have imagined, which is the dysfunction of the general House and Senate, but we have no ESEA legislation. And basically, because we have no educational legislation for more than 10 years, all right, the Secretary of Education feels, I think, probably in good faith, that he has the ability to step in here and start negotiating back and forth with individual states, all right, around what the kind of the frame is around these 2 pieces of federal legislation. The point I want to make is that in some senses, negotiations here between these 2 levels that didn't exist 10 years ago has enormous repercussions on what it is one is supposed to do at the site levels, collect data, measure, focus on, and so forth. That is about as profound. Forget all the issues around what we teach, how we teach, when we teach it, and so forth. This is a profound redoing of the structure of public education. All right? And it moves to powerful negotiations here that basically this group doesn't even get a voice in it. Right? And in some senses, a good deal of loading around what one will and will not do, and so forth. Once you, out of No Child Left Behind, collect data here by individual child every year, once you do that, then in some senses you can start talking not just about site, but you have then the ability to talk about classroom. Once you can talk about classroom, in quotes, then in some senses it's Katie bar the door on measurement on all sorts of issues. Measurement in the narrowest sense, targeting individuals and so forth. These are huge interventions, and they realign the structure of decision making in the country. And so it's naive for me to draw a picture in some senses that looks like 1985, 1995. It doesn't look like that anymore. It looks like this. All right? And in some senses, California, interestingly enough, simply said to this group, no, around major issues, and that in some senses bought you 2 to 3 years and so forth and so on, to do it the right order and so. But I want to basically end on a real note, which is to say this is particular to California, but it is not particular to the country. Just the opposite. Just the opposite. And the last piece of our whole dialogue is to say, if you keep shoving hard the direction and pace, the way we've talked about it, and you push direction and pace too hard because you're not listening deeply to how it's going state by state and school by school and local by local, you tend then to, in some senses, begin to lose what it is you're trying to do, because in some senses you start feeding the 2 edges, the 2 major groups here who basically will resist this profoundly, you know, and so forth, Tea Party and so forth. The real issue is the top loses touch with the listening and learning. And when you do that, you don't know what's happening to you. You make a major mistake in terms of pace. You try to do it too fast. You lose the quality piece, and then you lose the ball game. So I mean, all of that, one ought to say it clearly. And to everybody's credit, this thing is still working hard, deep, you know, in schools and classrooms, the staff and the administration is basically across the country, as best we can read, with tiny exceptions, everybody's after this. And that's amazing given the maelstrom, in some senses, politically here. So that's the whole picture, and that's the way to draw it, probably.